Hey, my name is Linda, and I'm 61. I've been working as the office manager at a mid-sized construction firm in suburban Ohio for the past 13 years. It's not glamorous, but it's stable, and stability has meant everything to me since my husband passed. He was my rock, and after he died, I struggled to find my balance. But this job, this routine, it gave me something to hold on to. I became the person who knows where the extra pens are, who remembers everyone's birthday, and who never lets a single invoice go unpaid. I'm the one people go to when something goes wrong, or when they need a helping hand. My life is like a steady hum. No surprises, no wild moments. And honestly, I prefer it that way. I blend into the background, keeping the office running smoothly, making sure the bills are paid and the schedules are kept. It's a quiet existence, but I'm okay with that. But that Thursday, that morning, everything changed. It started like any other. I arrived early, like I always do, while the office was still empty and the world was slowly waking up. The smell of coffee filled the air, and I made sure to set up the break room just right, nothing extravagant. Just the usual. Coffee pots ready, snacks in their proper place. It was a small, almost meditative part of my morning routine. It's where I could find a few moments of peace before the chaos of the workday began. But today, as I organized the break room, I heard voices near the front lobby. Laughter. A deeper male voice, younger. Then I heard my boss, Mr. Hill, chuckle in his usual way. "Come on in, Tyler. Let me introduce you to the crew," he said. I paused, my hands frozen mid-air as I wiped down the counter. Tyler Hill. I knew that name. Tyler was Mr. Hill's son, but I hadn't seen him since he was just a polite kid, helping out in the archives room during one of his summers in college. He couldn't have been more than 19 or 20 then. He wasn't anything special in my eyes. Just another young man trying to figure out his place in the world. But that was years ago. Now, Tyler was in his 30s, apparently ready to join the family business. I didn't expect much from him. Young, probably eager to prove himself, but just another kid taking his first steps in the grown-up world. I turned around just as they walked in, and that's when I saw him. I was unprepared for what I was about to see. Tyler had changed. He was no longer the awkward college kid I remembered. He was taller, broader. His presence filled the room in a way I didn't expect. He carried himself differently now. There was a kind of confidence about him, an ease in his movements. He wasn't the kid I remembered. He was a man now, and his transformation was undeniable. His dark hair was swept back casually, and his blue eyes, those eyes held a sharpness I didn't recognize. They seemed to see everything, taking in every detail, and in that moment it felt like they were seeing me, really seeing me. When our eyes met, I felt something stir inside me, something I hadn't felt in a long time. There was a brief pause, a strange kind of electricity that passed between us. It was fleeting, but it was there. I couldn't shake the feeling that something had just shifted in the air around us. He smiled then, genuinely, as if he'd recognized something in me, and said, "Linda, right? I remembered you." I laughed a little too quickly, brushing my hands on my slacks to distract myself. "Wow, you have a good memory. You were just a teenager the last time I saw you." He nodded, holding my gaze just a second too long. "Yeah," he said, his voice deep and steady. "Time changes people." The way he said it, his tone soft but layered with meaning, made something stir deep inside me. I felt flushed, flustered, and I hated it. I was the type of woman who never got flustered, who never allowed herself to be caught off guard. But there was something about the way he looked at me, something about the warmth in his eyes, that made me feel seen, really seen. It was strange, and it unsettled me. I wasn't used to being noticed like that, certainly, not by someone so young. I had grown accustomed to being the background, the quiet, dependable presence who took care of everyone else. But in that moment, I felt like I mattered, like I existed outside of my role in this office. The rest of the day passed in a blur. I tried to focus on my work, typing out emails and organizing files, but my mind kept drifting back to that moment, to Tyler's eyes, to his words, his question. Time changes people. Did it? Had it changed me? I caught glimpses of him throughout the day, walking through the office with his father, making notes, asking questions. He was so different now, so much more confident, so much more in control. I couldn't help but watch him as he moved about. The office. Every time he passed by my desk, I could feel his gaze on me. It wasn't inappropriate, but it was enough to make me self-conscious. His attention was too much, too focused, and I didn't know how to respond to it. As the day wore on, I found myself looking for excuses to stay busy, to keep my mind off the strange stirrings inside me. But I couldn't. I kept thinking about him, about his smile, his laugh, the way he spoke to me with such ease and familiarity. I didn't know how to make sense of it all. And then, as I was packing up to leave, I heard my name. Linda. I turned. It was Tyler, standing in the hallway, his jacket slung casually over one shoulder. His eyes met mine, and for a moment, I felt that same electric charge between us again. I had to blink a few times, trying to shake off the feeling. "Can I ask you something?" he said, his voice low but clear. I nodded, trying to keep my composure, though my heart was racing. "Of course." He stepped closer, and I felt an odd flutter in my chest. "Are you happy here? I mean, in this job, in this routine?" It was such an unexpected question, especially coming from him. I blinked again, unsure of how to answer. I guess I am. It's safe, comfortable." He nodded slowly, looking at me with those intense blue eyes. Then he smiled again, but it wasn't the same smile he had shown me earlier. This one was softer, more knowing. Comfort's not always the same as happiness. And with that, he turned and walked away, leaving me standing there, rooted to the spot. I watched him go, trying to understand what had just happened. What did he mean by that? Was he implying that I wasn't happy? Or was it just a random question? A passing thought? But it didn't feel random. It felt intentional. I stood there in the quiet hum of the closing office, the weight of his words settling around me. Why had that simple conversation felt like someone had just pulled back a curtain on a room I hadn't dared to enter in years? What had shifted inside me? I had no answers, only questions. And for the first time in a long time, I wasn't sure how to navigate the path ahead. Ask ChatGPT. The days that followed felt strange. I kept telling myself I was overthinking things. Tyler was just being polite, right? Thoughtful even. He was new to the office, and it made sense that he would want to get to know the people here. Especially someone who had been around for as long as I had. He probably wasn't aware of how his questions made me feel. But the more I tried to convince myself that I was imagining things, the more his words, his eyes, and the way he looked at me lingered. In my thoughts like an unfinished song. Was I happy? Comfortable? Yes. Safe? Sure. But happy? That question stayed with me. Like a puzzle I couldn't solve. It wasn't just his question that stayed with me, but the way he had looked at me, the depth in his eyes. Like he was seeing more than just the woman who ran the office. He saw someone else, someone who wasn't just defined by her job. I had been just Linda, the office manager, for so long that I'd forgotten what it felt like to be seen as more than that. To be noticed as a person with hopes, dreams, and desires. that went beyond the endless tasks of everyday life. And then there was the way he spoke to me. So direct, so sure of himself. I hadn't met someone like him in years. Someone who wasn't afraid to make me feel uncomfortable in the best possible way. On Monday morning, as I walked into the office, I still couldn't shake that feeling. I had even dreamed about him over the weekend, not in any romantic sense, no. Not quite like that, but his voice, his question kept echoing in my mind. "Are you happy here?" It was like a quiet, persistent hum, reminding me that something had shifted. Something was different now. The office was quieter than usual, the sounds of printers and phone calls filling the space, but everything felt strangely distant, like I was in a dream. The sun streamed through the windows, casting a soft golden stripe across the lobby floor. It was a peaceful morning, yet I couldn't settle myself. I made my way to the break room, like I always did, pouring myself a cup of coffee. The rich, dark aroma was comforting. Something solid to hold onto in the midst of the strange feelings swirling inside me. I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. Everything was fine. It was just a question. Nothing more. But then the soft knock at the door of the break room startled me. "Morning," Tyler's voice greeted me from the doorway, and when I turned, there he was. I wasn't prepared for how good he looked. His sleeves were rolled up casually. His shirt collar opened just enough to reveal the hint of a tan. I wasn't used to feeling this aware of someone. His presence seemed to fill the space, and I felt it how different he was, how he made the air feel charged. "Thought I might find you in here," he said with that same easy smile. "I wanted to ask if you'd be willing to go over some of the project files with me later. My dad says you know more about how this place runs than anyone." I nodded, surprised at the unexpected request. "Sure, of course. Just let me know when you want to go over them." He stepped inside, taking the seat across from me, and for a moment, neither of us spoke. The silence stretched a little too long, but it wasn't uncomfortable. There was something about it, something unspoken between us. I felt like we were on the edge of something I couldn't quite name. "Well, thanks," he said, breaking the silence. "I know this place is kind of like a machine, right? You keep it all running smoothly, and the rest of us just follow the process." I nodded, not sure how to respond. It wasn't just my job after all. It was my life. I had been here so long I knew every little detail. I was the person who made sure everything stayed in line, who made sure the deadlines were met, the invoices were paid, the schedule was set. And yet, as he spoke to me, I realized something. I wasn't just a cog in the machine. I had more to offer than that. More than just the woman behind the desk who made sure everything was ticking along. We spent the rest of the morning going over spreadsheets and invoices. I noticed how intently he listened, his focus sharp. But there was something else, something more than just professional curiosity. He was paying attention to me. Not just the numbers or the files, but to the way I spoke, the way I organized my thoughts. There was an intensity behind his gaze that unsettled me, and every time our eyes met, I felt a little spark at one point. His arm brushed against mine as we both reached for the same file. Neither of us pulled away. It was a simple gesture, something that could be easily ignored, but I couldn't. I felt the warmth of his skin, the weight of the moment. My heart skipped a beat, and I quickly focused on the papers in front of me, pretending I didn't feel the heat that was slowly spreading through me. At the end of our session, he leaned back in his chair, stretching lazily, and I noticed how the fabric of his shirt pulled across his shoulders. "You know," he said, his voice more casual now, "you have a really calm way about you. It makes all this stuff easier to understand." I looked up at him, trying to figure out if he was just being polite or if there was something more. I've been here a long time, I replied, clearing my throat. You learn how to keep things steady. Yeah, he said, nodding slowly. I like steady. His voice dropped lower, softer, and I could feel the shift in the air around us. It wasn't just about the project files anymore. I could tell he was saying something else, something deeper. I quickly gathered my thoughts. That should give you a good start, I said, closing the folder in front of me, trying to regain control over the situation. But Tyler didn't move right away. He was still looking at me, his gaze intense and searching. Then he said, Would you ever want to do something else? I mean, outside this office. I froze for a moment. Was he asking me to leave the office? No, not in that way. His words were carefully chosen, but there was an underlying meaning to them, something more than just a suggestion. I used to, I said, before I even realized I had spoken. I used to dream about other things, but life happened. Marriage, bills, loss, and routine becomes the way you keep moving. He didn't say anything right away. There was a quiet pause, and I could feel him considering my words. Finally, he spoke, his voice soft but firm. Maybe it's time to think about dreaming again. I laughed softly, unsure of how to respond. Was he flirting with me? Was I imagining this or worse, hoping for it? Was this just part of his charm? Or was there something more behind it? I started, but my voice trailed off, unsure of what to say. That evening, as I stayed later than usual, finishing reports and clearing my desk, I couldn't shake the feeling that something had changed between us. Was this the start of something? Or was I reading too much into it? When I finished packing up, I noticed a small envelope tucked under my coffee mug. My name was written on the front in neat handwriting. My heart skipped a beat, and I opened it slowly. Inside, there was a single line written in Tyler's handwriting. I can't stop thinking about our conversations. Maybe we should talk more outside of work. I sat there for a moment, my hand trembling as I held the note. What did this mean? Was Tyler really interested in me? Or was he just being polite? I wasn't sure. But one thing was certain, my life had just been turned upside down. The next day was even more unsettling than the last. As I arrived at the office, that small note from Tyler weighing heavily in my pocket, I couldn't stop thinking about what had happened the evening before. I had spent hours staring at the note, running my fingers over the smooth paper, wondering what he had meant by it. The question that lingered in my mind was almost maddening. What happens next? I had spent so many years locked into my predictable routine that the idea of change, of something new, something unexpected, felt terrifying. But the more I thought about Tyler, the more I realized that he represented something I hadn't allowed myself to think about in years. He was an invitation to something else, something beyond the safe, predictable world I had carefully built for myself. And even though I wanted to resist the pull, I couldn't ignore it. When I walked into the office that morning, my heart was still racing from the note, and I found myself looking for Tyler. He wasn't in his usual spot, and for a moment, I let out a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. Maybe today would be like any other, just business as usual. But as the morning wore on, I couldn't shake the feeling that something had already changed. Even without him here, his presence was with me. Around mid-morning, Tyler walked in. He was wearing a navy jacket, the same one I had seen him in the other day, and he carried a leather briefcase in his hand. He seemed perfectly at ease, and yet I could see something different in the way he moved, like he was carrying a secret, a silent tension that seemed to mirror the one I was feeling inside. When he saw me, his lips curled into a smile. Same easy smile he always gave me. But this time there was something else in it. It was more deliberate, more knowing. "Morning, Linda," he said, his voice warm, as if it had been forever since we'd spoken last, even though it had only been a few hours. "Morning," I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. "I was wondering," he began, shifting his weight as he leaned slightly against the counter where I stood, "if you had a chance to look over the files I left with you yesterday." I nodded, not trusting myself to say much more. "Yes, I've gone through them. Everything looks good. You should be ready to present to your dad soon." His eyes met mine, and for a moment neither of us spoke. There was an unspoken tension hanging in the air, something that neither of us seemed ready to address, but both of us were acutely aware of. His gaze lingered on me a little longer than I was used to, and I felt my breath catch in my chest. I had been so focused on my work, on keeping everything steady and controlled, that standing there, with him looking at me like that, all the walls I had built began to crumble. "I'm glad we're working together on this," he said, breaking the silence. "You have a calm about you that makes everything easier to understand. It's like, I don't know, you make the complicated stuff seem simple." I tried to smile, but the way his words landed on me felt different. They weren't just compliments. There was a depth to them that made me feel more vulnerable, more exposed than I was comfortable with. "Thank you," I said quietly, looking down at the papers in front of me, trying to avoid his gaze, afraid that if I looked up again, I would be caught in that moment of vulnerability, that Tyler wasn't finished. He took a small step closer to me, and his voice lowered barely above a whisper. "I've been thinking about our conversation the other day." My heart skipped. I had been thinking about it too constantly. I hadn't been able to forget his question. "Are you happy here?" It had reverberated in my mind for days, pulling me in different directions. I didn't know how to answer it, and I wasn't sure I ever would. "I meant it," he continued, his words deliberate, each one weighed with intent. "Comfort's not the same as happiness. And you deserve more than just comfort. You deserve something that makes you feel alive again." I looked up at him, meeting his eyes for the first time fully since he'd walked in. His gaze was so intense, so filled with meaning, that I felt like I was falling into it. Falling into something I wasn't sure I was ready for. Something I hadn't allowed myself to experience in years. My voice faltered, and I cleared my throat, unsure of how to respond. "I don't know what you mean, Tyler. I'm fine. Really, I've built a life for myself. It's steady. It works." He didn't pull away. He didn't retreat into the safety of professionalism. He leaned in a little closer, just enough that I could feel the warmth of his presence, feel the tension crackling between us. "I know," he said softly, "but sometimes steady isn't enough. Sometimes we need something more." The way he said it sent a chill down my spine. I didn't know what to make of his words. Was he talking about work, or was he talking about us? Before I could answer, Tyler stepped back, breaking the moment. "I'll let you get back to your day," he said, almost as if nothing had happened. But the weight of the conversation hung in the air, a delicate thread we had both just walked along, and now neither of us could ignore it. I watched him walk away, my heart still pounding in my chest. I was trembling slightly, not from fear, but from something else, something I couldn't put into words. As the day dragged on, I found it harder to concentrate. I couldn't stop thinking about Tyler and that note. By late afternoon, I found myself alone in my office, trying to work through some files. But nothing seemed to hold my attention. The fluorescent lights overhead buzzed quietly. The sounds of the office felt distant, and the only thing that mattered was the feeling that had grown between us. It was undeniable now. There was something between Tyler and me, something that neither of us could explain, but both of us felt. Just as I was about to pack up for the day, I heard a soft knock at my office door. Linda? Tyler's voice came from the other side, low and tentative. Can we talk? My heart skipped again. I stood up immediately, not sure if I was prepared for whatever was about to happen. When I opened the door, Tyler was standing there, the same earnest expression on his face. But this time, there was something more in his eyes. Something that made my breath catch in my throat. He held out a small envelope. I thought maybe you'd want to hear me out, he said quietly. I took the envelope from him, my hands shaking slightly. The weight of it in my hands felt like a promise, a beginning, or perhaps an end. I'm asking you to take a chance, Tyler continued, his voice steady but vulnerable. To let yourself feel something again. I can't promise what it will be, but I can promise it won't be boring. I stood there for a moment, caught between the comfort of my old life and pull of something new. Something unknown. Something that was just beginning to form between us. Tyler smiled gently. I'm not going anywhere, Linda, but I'd really like it if you'd give me a chance. As he walked away, leaving me standing in the doorway with the envelope in my hands, I realized something. The life I had built for myself wasn't as stable as I had once thought. Maybe it was time to step outside the comfort zone. Maybe it was time to dream again. With a deep breath, I opened the envelope, and the note inside read, "Let's see where this goes." And in that moment, I knew that everything had changed. Ask ChatGPT.